Okay, so welcome to your first video lesson. So this is a full lesson in one video. There's no documents or anything like that you need. All you need to do is follow the instructions and the activities in this video very carefully, pausing and working on the activities when you are instructed to. So the first thing to do is to write down that the title for today's lesson is Vegetation in Tropical Rainforest. Don't worry if you don't know what that word vegetation means or you've not come across it before. It just means plants. So we are just looking at the plants in a tropical rainforest this lesson. And for the starter, what I'd like you to do is describe what this plant looks like and what are its characteristics. So just say what you see. Describe the plant, its shape, its colour, and any features that you can. So what I want you to do is pause this video and spend 60 seconds, no more, just writing a sentence or a short paragraph to describe this plant. As a challenge, you could try and link that to the climate and soil, or just write down what the climate and soil in a tropical rainforest are like. So pause the video and take 60 seconds. Okay then, so you've had your 60 seconds to describe this plant. So I can introduce you to the plant. So there I am, Mr. Bato, and meet JP. So JP is my Swiss cheese plant, or the full name is Monstera deliciosa. And the Monstera deliciosa, or Swiss cheese plant, is a tropical rainforest plant. So what you're going to try and do today is you're going to try and work out why JP, the plant, looks so different to plants that we have in the UK. So why is it such a strange looking plant? So what I want you to think about first is how are tropical rainforests like onions and Shrek. So what I want you to do in a second is pause the video and just have 30 seconds of thinking time. How are tropical rainforests like onions and Shrek? So pause the video for 30 seconds now. Okay then, so the answer to the question, how are tropical rainforests like onions and Shrek? The answer is they have layers. So both tropical rainforests, or all of tropical rainforests, onions and Shrek have layers. And that might seem quite silly, but it is in fact quite important that tropical rainforests have layers. Because in each different layer of the rainforest, the vegetation or the plants look a little bit different. So they have different characteristics. So going to watch a quick video on the 4 layers in a tropical rainforest now. All I want you to try and do is write down what the 4 layers of a tropical rainforest are. And a bit of a challenge, can you write down the differences between the 4 layers? So not only what the 4 layers are, what they're called, but also what they are like. What are their different characteristics?
The layers of the tropical rainforest. Chocolate may come from the cacao tree, but where does the cacao tree come from? The cacao tree is native to the tropical rainforests of South and Central America. Tropical rainforests have 4 layers, each with its own kind of plants and animals. The emergent layer contains the tops of the very tallest trees, 100 to 240 feet high, that peek out above the shorter trees of the canopy. This layer is home to the birds, bats, and butterflies. The canopy is a leafy environment containing the leaves and branches of many trees. Nearly 90% of all rainforest life is found here, including monkeys, reptiles, more insects, and plants such as mosses, vines, and orchids. The understory is a shady, humid layer with little plant and animal life. Below the canopy, but still above the forest floor. Most of the plants and animals here don't need much light, such as beetles, small mammals, snakes, palms, ferns, and everyone's favorite, the cacao tree. The forest floor is home to both the largest and smallest animals in the rainforest. Insects and spiders coexist with giant anteaters and jaguars. Plants don't often grow here because less than 1% of sunlight can penetrate the leafy plants in the layers above. And there you have it. The many layers of the tropical rainforest. Which layer would you most like to visit?
Okay, so that was an overview of the 4 different layers of the tropical rainforest. So in terms of your tropical rainforest and ecosystems, unit. This is the first lesson on, the second lesson on tropical rainforest. So we've looked at the environmental characteristics. Now we're looking at the structure and the different characteristics of the vegetation. So in this lesson, you're going to try and identify vegetation adaptations. So identify how plants have adapted. Then we're going to be able to describe vegetation adaptations. So say what adaptations plants have. And then finally, we're going to try to explain how those adaptations help a plant survive in the rainforest. And we are going to do that by identifying or finding out identifying what adaptation JP has and why those adaptations would help JP live in tropical rainforest. So the first thing we need to do is have a look at the 4 layers of a tropical rainforest. Now this says using your worksheets, but as this is a video lesson, you'll just be copying your own version of the diagram. So you can pause and play this part of the video as much as you need to, so you can rewind it so that you can complete your diagram. But we are now going to complete a diagram of the 4 layers of the tropical rainforest. So here is a copy of the diagram, and as you can see, on the left we've got the height above the ground in meters. So at 0, that is the forest floor, all the way up to 40 plus meters where we get our tallest trees. Now these circles represent the amount of sunlight that is getting to each layer of the rainforest, and we'll talk about those as well. So what you might want to do is take a full A4 page and turn it landscape and just draw out that grid using a ruler so it's nice and neat, using a ruler so that you're ready to complete this diagram. So if you need to, take an opportunity to pause the video and draw out this template ready for your diagram. So if you're going to pause the video, pause it now. Okay then, so we are going to get on with our diagram of the tropical rainforest. So we are going to start with the uppermost layer of the rainforest, or the top layer of the rainforest, and that layer is the emergent layer. Now in the emergent layer, as it suggests, we only have a few trees emerging from above the canopy. So this is where we have our tallest trees. So I'm going to draw in just a few really tall trees, and this is going to be the first layer of our rainforest. Now because this is the tallest layer, there isn't really anything blocking any sunlight getting to this layer. So in terms of the sunlight that this layer receives, it receives a lot of sunlight. So when we colour in our circle, we're going to colour in the whole of the circle, or in other words, this layer, the emergent layer, receives 100% of the sunlight. So it receives 100% of the sunlight. And the trees are very tall. And in order to be very tall, they have a sort of pyramid shape. So they sort of they're all still very thin and vertical, but they get wider at their base. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is later on. So when we're drawing our trees, they're relatively tall and straight, but also have that pyramidal base. So that is the canopy layer. And we can talk, or we can label that our canopy layer, sorry, not our canopy layer, our emergent layer, that has capox, and these are the largest and tallest trees. So capox are the largest and tallest trees, and we find those in the layer that we call the emergent layer. So we can label that this is the emergent layer. The next layer that we have in the rainforest is the canopy. Now this is the densest and the most biodiverse layer of the tropical rainforest. So we get the most plants and the most animals in the canopy. So I'm going to draw quite a lot of vegetation in this layer. So on your diagram, you can be adding this vegetation. And you'll see, or you'll notice, that the trees have a very similar shape to the tallest capox that rise into the emergent layer. And the reason is because these trees are still growing as tall as they possibly can in order to compete for that sunlight. So these trees, once again, are nice and tall, like the capox, but they're not quite tall enough. Only a few of our trees actually grow all the way to the emergent layer, they have that similar shape with a pyramidal base. In terms of the amount of sunlight that the canopy gets, the canopy is very important because it blocks about 90% of all sunlight. So it receives pretty much all the sunlight. Only a tiny bit is sort of absorbed or blocked by the emergent layer, which means the canopy receives almost all of the sunlight. So there's only a small segment you can see in my diagram that has been left that the canopy doesn't receive. It's also incredibly biodiverse, so you might want to draw some different fruits onto your canopy. But you're also likely to get lots of wildlife, so I'm going to draw some very, very simple wildlife, some birds. But this is the most biodiverse layer of the rainforest, and that is, we call that layer the canopy. And in terms of our labels for the canopy, we can label the canopy that plants grow vertically to reach sunlight. So we can see that all of our trees are all growing vertically. So all of our trees are all growing vertically. Now the next layer of the rainforest is a layer that we call the under canopy, or sometimes the understory. So we call it the under canopy, or sometimes the understory. So you can label it as the under canopy. Now the under canopy is famous for being a very woody layer. And what I mean by that is there are lots of vines and branches and creepers. So there are lots of vines travelling in between the trees. And some of these might also creep up trees. And we call those creepers or epiphytes. Now epiphytes are plants that live on other plants. And epiphytes grow on other trees because rainforest soil is really infertile. So there's no real point in them growing in the soil. So instead they get their nutrients from the air and from other trees. And they do that by growing really far up the trees. It also helps them get enough sunlight. And the reason why lots of these lianas and creepers in the under canopy are trying to go upwards is because down here in the under canopy there is very, very little sunlight. And the reason is because all of that dense vegetation in the canopy and that really biodiverse layer that blocks 90% of sunlight. So that blocks 90% of all the sunlight, which means that only 10% of sunlight that reaches the canopy also reaches the under canopy. So quite dramatically, when we are colouring in our under canopy, we're only receiving about 10% of our sunlight. So it starts to get very dark very quickly. And if we are labelling in terms of the adaptations, we can say in our under canopy that lianas and epiphytes grow on trees in order to collect nutrients and sunlight. So they grow on the trees as opposed to growing towards the ground in order to help them get closer to that sunlight in the canopy and the emergent layer, but also so they can access nutrients as the rainforest soil is very infertile. Okay, so the last layer that we are going to go through is the forest floor. The last layer we're going to go through is the forest floor. Now, on the forest floor, one of the most characteristic things you'll see on the forest floor are plants with very large, very broad, and very green leaves. And those leaves often have a drip tip, which is a little tip that allows water to fall off. Now these trees or these plants are or have very broad leaves, so they can collect as much sunlight as possible, because remember, on the forest floor there is very little sunlight. So they have very broad leaves. They also have very dark green leaves because those leaves contain a lot of chlorophyll, which is how plant cells photosynthesize. So they have a lot of chlorophyll, which gives them a very, very dark green colour. And we'll talk a little bit about how JP, my Swiss cheese plant, displays some of these characteristics. But they also have drip tip leaves, which are sort of pointed tips, which allow excess water, because we know it rains a lot in a rainforest. They allow excess water to drip off from the plant so it doesn't rot, because this part of the rainforest can be incredibly hot and humid. So we can label this as the forest floor. And we can also add that very little sunlight gets to this part of the forest. So very little sunlight gets to this part. Probably only about 1% of what originally, or 2% of what originally hit the uppermost emergent layer. And in terms of our labels, so we can add some more labels about the adaptation. So plants have massive dark leaves, green leaves, to absorb maximum sunlight. And that is our diagram, a very simple diagram of the 4 layers of the tropical rainforest, or the 4 layers of vegetation. So if you need to, like I said, pause the video and play the video or rewind the video as you need, so you can get that diagram drawn. Now the next thing you are going to do, once I've got rid of this, is you are going to watch a video which is all about adaptations that these plants have. So we've got an idea of the structure of the rainforest, but now we've got some adaptations. So what I want you to do, as you watch the video, first of all, write down the name of any rainforest plant adaptations mentioned in the video. So identify what are the actual adaptations that some plants have. But number 2, and this is probably the most important part, explain how it helps a plant live in the rainforest. So how does having that feature mean that that plant can survive in the hot and wet conditions of a rainforest? So for example, buttress roots, which are these pyramidal roots which I mentioned the tallest trees in the emergent layer have. So an example, buttress roots, I've identified and written down the name of the adaptation. It's called buttress roots, but I've also explained they give wide bases to trees so they can grow tall and reach sunlight, because the under canopy and the shrub layer or the forest floor are very, very dark. So those trees are growing buttress roots so they can go really tall into the canopy or the emergent layer. So as you watch the video, you're writing down the name of any adaptations, but also explaining how those adaptations help a plant to survive in the tropical rainforest.
This is an example of how a leaf has adapted to the rainforest environment. So, in a rainforest, it rains a lot, and the leaves don't want to hold on to lots and lots of water, so they've adapted to have this sort of conical shape. You can see it sort of flaps up and down like that, and all the water will travel in along here, down this sort of central canal, and then off the end, and that part of the leaf is called the drip tip. We'll see one in action later when it's ready. Drip tip in action. These vines are called lianas. They hang down to the forest floor, and you can see that they attach onto the main body of the tree. They are what you call epiphytes, like parasites, hanging on to, they are parasitic, so they're holding on to the tree, and they're getting their nutrients from the air and from the tree rather than from the ground. Stop. This is a good example to show the root system of the big rainforest trees. These are called buttress roots, and you can see there's a big network of them that are spreading out down into the soil. Just so happens that the soil's fallen away here, so we can get a really good look at them. So these are the buttress roots. That'll do. A very common adaptation of plants in the rainforest is to have beautiful flowers, very, very strong smelling and bright colours. This attracts insects to them so that they can then pollinate. There are some fantastic animals that you can find in the rainforest, so I'm going to talk just about a couple here. So monkeys that come in lots of different shapes and sizes are incredible. They have adapted to living in the rainforest because they can climb really, really well, and they're able to swing from tree to tree so they can stay away from their predators on the ground, but also so they can eat all of the fruit which is found in the canopy layer. Another fantastic animal is the sloth. I think perhaps one of my favourite rainforest animals. Sloths are incredibly lazy. They move very, very slowly and spend most of their time sleeping. They live up in the canopy too, and they eat only leaves, and they never wash themselves, and so during their life they turn slowly but surely green. And the final interesting fact about a sloth is that it will spend a week at a time in a tree, only coming down to go to the toilet once a week.
Okay, so started to go a little bit into animals there, but that gives you a good look forward to what we're going to look at next lesson, because we are going to, or in a few lessons, because we are going to look at animal adaptations to the rainforest as well. So now we're going to start to explain, or start to try and explain, why JP, so my Swiss cheese plant, my rainforest plant, looks the way it does. So the first question I want you to answer, and you can take a few, or you can take about 2 minutes to write your answer to this. So question 1, why are all of the branches of the Swiss cheese plant on one side of the plant? So what are all of those branches trying to reach towards? So what I want you to do is pause the video for 2 minutes and write your answer to question 1. So pause the video now. Okay, then question number 2. So exactly the same as question number 1. So I'm going to read the question, then going to pause the video for 2 minutes, write your answer, and then we'll move on. So the next question, why are all the leaves of the Swiss cheese plant so green and so large? So think about the rainforest. Why are all the leaves of the Swiss cheese plant so green and so large? So pause the video for 2 minutes now. Okay, so moving on to question number 3. So exactly the same as before. The question is, why has this branch on the Swiss cheese plant grown in this way? And by in this way, I mean, why has it grown straight up? So why is it growing vertically? So give yourself 2 minutes to answer this question and pause the video now. Okay then, question number 4. Exactly the same as before. So 2 minutes to tell me, why is the leaf of the Swiss cheese plant shaped in this way? And I'm focusing on the tip of the leaf here. So I'm focusing on... one second. So I'm focusing on this part of the leaf here. So why is that part of the leaf shaped in that way? So 2 minutes to answer that question. Pause the video now. Okay then, the last question, question number 5. It is a bit of a challenge. What are these? So the sort of brown vine that you can see there, what are they? Okay, so once you've paused the video and had 2 minutes at answering that challenge, you can go through the answers. So question 1. So swap over to a different colour pen. Use a green pen if you've got one, but if you haven't got a green pen, use a different colour pen and add these answers to what you wrote for the question. So green pen, if you got certain elements right, then you can tick those, but if you didn't, then add to your answer using a different colour or green pen. So question 1, why are all those branches growing in one direction or in that direction? They are growing towards the sunlight. So remember, rainforest plants, particularly those on the forest floor, will always grow towards the sun. So these particular branches are, like they would in the rainforest, trying to grow towards the sun, because there is in some parts of the rainforest so little sunlight, it's vital that these plants and their branches get as close to the sun as they possibly can. So if you are thinking about where the window is, the sun, you can see all the branches growing towards the sun. Question number 2, why are they so broad and why are they so green? They are green because they contain lots of chlorophyll. The colour and the large leaves help the Swiss cheese plant absorb maximum sunlight even on the dark forest floor. So question number 3, with your green pen, this plant is growing vertically to reach more sunlight. So the higher up in the rainforest you go, the higher up from the forest floor, all the way up into the under canopy, the canopy and the emergent, the higher you go, the more sunlight you are going. So this plant has put all of its energy into vertical growth in order to reach the sunlight. Question number 4. So why is the end or the tip of that leaf shaped that way? And that's because it is a drip tip leaf, and it helps some of the 2,500 millimeters of rainfall the forest receives each year to fall off the plant, preventing rot. And you're going to see a slow-mo video here of the drip tip in action. So I've got a spray bottle which is going to imitate rain falling on the leaf, and you will see how the plant and its shape diverts the water droplets towards the drip tip, so towards the drip tip, so that they can run off the leaf. So you can see I probably put about half a litre of water onto that leaf in total, but the plant is very efficient at using its drip tip to lose that water, so that in the hot conditions and the high rainfall of the tropical rainforest, the plant leaf doesn't rot. And then finally the challenge, so they are aerial roots or lianas, and they help plants get to get nutrients and CO2 from the air because the soil is infertile. So those aerial roots will climb other plants and get their nutrients instead from the air and those other plants. The last thing I want you to do is a plenary, which is a little bit of a gap fill. So you've got your word bank at the top, and all you need to do is write out this paragraph, but with the missing words. Now this will take you a while, so what I want you to do is pause the video and give yourself 8 minutes to do this. So pause the video for 8 minutes and have a go at the gap fill now. Okay, and the last thing for this lesson, I want you to swap over to your green pen or swap over to your different colour pen and just tick your answers if you got them correct, or just write in the correct word if you didn't get them right. So the paragraph should read, tropical rainforests are generally located near the equator. Their climate is hot and wet all year round, and their soil, also known as latosol, is generally infertile with a thin layer of fertile soil on top. Although the forest floor receives little sunlight, some plants and shrubs still grow. This is why it's sometimes referred to as the shrub layer. The understory or under canopy is between the canopy and the forest floor. It is hot and humid in this layer. It is also quite dark. Vegetation here has adapted by growing large leaves to absorb as much sunlight as possible. The canopy is the densest layer of the rainforest, where branches and leaves overlap each other. The canopy catches 90% of the sunlight, and this layer is very biodiverse, with a wide variety of birds and animals living in the canopy. The final layer is the emergent layer. Only a few trees break through the canopy, and they have tall, straight trunks that grow up to 16 feet across. These trees endure the strongest winds and highest temperatures. And that is it for our video lesson. So well done. And if there are any parts that you need to go back over, feel free to rewind, pause the video in the relevant sections to ensure that you have enough time to complete the lesson. But that's it. Thank you.